What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Lendy Lodge, where we are coming off fresh from that Japanese state of play with the announcement that the Octopath Traveler 0 demo was live and ready for people to give a shot, which I spent a lot of last night and early this morning finishing up the demo, playing the full 3 hours, and just wanted to put my thoughts together and share with you guys what my overall first impressions were, the good and the bad, and what I'm looking forward to most as we get nearer and nearer to the game's release. But before we get into that, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel if you're interested in RPG and other gaming news, theories, updates, and podcasts. But with that out of the way, let's talk about Octopath 0. So first, maybe to give you guys a little bit of idea of where I'm coming from, I am a huge fan of Octopath Traveler 2, probably one of my favorite RPGs in the last few years. Octopath 1, I'm still working through. I definitely see the difference between 2 and 1. I think both are very good games, but 2 to me just so far stands above Octopath 1. However, from the little bit I've played of the Octopath 0 demo, I see in the same way that Octopath 2 learned and expanded off of what was laid out in Octopath 1, Octopath 0 is doing the same thing with Octopath Traveler 2. And again, a lot of that does come from building off of Champions of the Continent and how a lot of that has been repurposed for console. But anyway, let's talk about the game's concept as a whole, which I think is absolutely brilliant. An RPG that, in a sense, combines two separate campaigns. One where you're going out and exploring the world in the very normal RPG fashion we've all gotten used to, that involves traveling through the world, continents, cities, villages, castles, towers, dungeons, you name it. But that there's a second tier to the campaign that has a whole different speed, which is a little bit more cozy, building up your hometown, Wishvale, which in the opening act was burnt to the... More on that in a minute. But what I love about this concept from the get-go is the amount of player freedom that this provides, is that whatever sort of gaming loop you're interested in having or creating for yourself, you in a sense are given two different approaches that, you know, depending on how you're feeling, you can pursue them individually or you can pursue them simultaneously. It's up to the player to decide. Those sorts of player freedoms are something that I think is really valuable in an RPG. Now, next, speaking of player freedoms, next we'll talk about the character customizer. So when you first boot up the game, you're customizing your character, the character that you're going to control in the narrative, in the open world, who will be from Wishvale and wants to rebuild it from the scraps. Now, here's my criticism, I suppose, is that I did feel the character customization options were very limited, especially for a game that's advertising its character customizer. However, I do understand that more options may be available when the game launches, and that expanding your options, whether it be hairstyles, hair colors, single tone, two-tone, all that kind of stuff, that you unlock more options as you go. For example, we've seen a lot of games in the last few years like Stellar Blade, where it's a game that has a lot of character customization options, but you have to unlock them through the campaign before you really unlock that freedom for yourself. All in all, the character customizer is serviceable and allows you to create a character that is certainly unique enough for the world of Octopath. But now let's move on to the game's opening act, the way it introduces its narrative. And again, one theme we're going to keep coming back to, that player freedom. So the game does introduce, in a sense, 3 separate tyrants that have their own means of controlling the population, controlling the world. You will get to choose which tyrant you want to pursue first, which again, coming back to that player freedom, is not only something that has thrived within the Octopath series to begin with, but it seems to be a concept they're continually building upon, and I can see that shining even through this brief 3-hour demo. Then the game does a good job of introducing you to the combat, Wishvale, your hometown, the people you're growing up with, etc. I'm gonna leave most of that out so as not to spoil anything, so you guys could see it for yourself should you give the demo a try. Next, I want to talk a little bit about the characters, which again is a big draw in Octopath. I think they have such a way of creating characters that are so charming, and the voice acting does go a long way with that. I did feel some of the audio quality in the voice acting was a bit lacking from the demo, but I also understand that's something that can be easily patched by the time the game is released. But the voice acting was anything but lacking. I thought even with the few snippets that we get in the beginning, seems to me every actor is doing a tremendous job of portraying their role. But a few standouts to me are obviously Stia, Fen, Lorana, and honestly, I just met Kelsis at the end of my 3-hour demo run, and he's becoming an early favorite for me. But again, so as not to spoil anything too much, I don't want to talk about the characters themselves too much, but that they all seem to so far have their own unique charm about them. And I would even say that for some of the NPCs as well. Next, I want to talk about what I think is the absolute highlight of the Octopath series and this demo, and that is the combat. In a way, it's like, it felt so good to experience all of that again, from the rhythm of the animations, when you break your enemy's defenses, just sort of the whole structure and pacing, cinematics, and interactivity of this combat. It all flows together so nicely, and even though really, especially considering it's just the beginning of the game, you don't get too much of the expansion on the combat yet. But again, as someone who's played Octopath 2 and sees what this system was built on, it's good to see that they're further heading in that direction and further building on what I thought was so successful in Octopath 2. And then again, just want to touch real quickly, going back to the characters, that I thought all the designs looked really good. I'm interested in meeting some more characters. Obviously, in 3 hours, you can only meet so much, but little tip for those of you who may not have played the demo yet. The demo will only let you play 3 hours of playtime, not 3 hours into the campaign. So if you sit there and you leave it idle for 20-30 minutes, that's going to count towards your 3 hours. At least that's the impression I got, that it's about 3 hours of playtime, not necessarily a point in the campaign you reach and they give you a halt. So just a little tip if you were thinking of trying the game out. But again, as an Octopath fan, I was delighted by this news. I cannot wait for this game to drop. But what about all of you out there? Are you considering giving this game a shot, giving this series a shot? And for those of you that have played Octopath, are you all in on Octopath Zero? And if you have played the demo, please share with us your thoughts below. But anyway, that's going to be all for today. You all be good out there. Be good to yourselves. Be good to each other. And I will see all of you beautiful sickos and normies next time.